Dr. Julian, you are live?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Go ahead, Dr. Julian. We are live.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. Ladies and gentlemen, yet another session of our very engaging and invigorating conversations around blockchain. Today, it's a continuation of what we had last week on Tuesday. Oh, sorry, this week on Tuesday, which is the successes and failures of blockchain. But before we start, I would like to invite Paul, our executive director, to tell us a thing or two about ABYA and what we are all about. Paul, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Julian. My name is Paul Makolaka, the executive director of Africa Blockchain Youth Ambassadors, or ABYA. ABYA is a Pan-African initiative that is out to promote the adoption of blockchain, Web3, and cryptocurrency in Africa. Our youth is concentrated on the youth because of a big proportion of our youth. A big proportion of the population in Africa are made up of the young people. But the most unfortunate thing is that most of the time they are left out of the economic equation. They are left out of opportunities that are available out there. So ABYA seeks to empower young people to be more proactive, to use these technologies that are out to make the playing field level for a lot of these young people, to provide for them opportunities, to make them aware of these opportunities. That's what ABYA is all about. And back to you, Dr. Julian. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am your host, calling in from Nairobi. My name's Dr. Julian Drow. I'm the Director of Strategy and Quality Assurance at Africa Blockchain Youth Ambassador, also known as ABYA. I consider myself a scholar practitioner. I enjoy and enthuse on bridging the gap between theory and practice, having just recently earned my doctorate from the University of Liverpool. I enjoy very intense conversations, but I like to put in a lot of fun as we generate new knowledge and learn. I'm a big fan of blockchain technology, and the other hat that I wear is that of the Chief Executive Officer of Schedules Business and Management Consulting, a practice that intervenes in workplace-based problems. Our conversation for today is successes and failures of blockchain, a follow-up of what we had last Tuesday, where we had the privilege of talking to Dr. Kahana, and Fatah Yamin Yatim was also in attendance. We are going to ask our audience, those who may have comments, those who may have questions, to feel free to post those comments and questions in the column provided on the right. And in the fullness of time, once we are done discussing the core issues, we will be inviting Fatah to also react on those comments. Having said that, I would like to welcome Fatah Yatim to this session, and I would like to quickly read out his bio. Calling all the way from Malaysia, Fatah is an advocate of blockchain, focusing on strategy and change management. He conducts, sorry, Paul, could that be on your side? Yeah. Okay, sorry, I'll do that again. Fatah is an advocate of blockchain, focusing on strategy and change management. He conducts lectures and workshops on blockchain and distributed ledger technologies. He was the chairman of Malaysia National Standards Technical Committee on Blockchain and Distributed Ledger Technologies in Malaysia. Fatah was also the deputy chairman of Malaysia's Industry Standards Committee for IT, Communications and Multimedia, Department of Standards in Malaysia. He is associated with the Organization of Islamic Cooperation Computer Emergency Response Team, Government Blockchain Association, US Malaysia Chapter, and UN Center for Trade Facilitation and E-Commerce. Fatah, we want to very warmly welcome you to this occasion and this function or event. And we want to be in a very safe space where we can all learn. Ideally, it's to share your experiences so that we can also learn from your many years of expertise. Before we start further, maybe you want to tell us one or two things about you today.
Okay, thank you very much. We're still waiting for the co-panelists, right? So I
Yes,
hope they join in
when the
so that
co-panelists
I'm not alone.
when the co-panelists come, we will infuse him or her with
Okay, yeah.
information. Yeah,
So
exactly.
as Dr. Julian mentioned just now, that this is my second appearance. I was in a session, similar session, 2 nights ago. Here is night, yeah, or
Yeah,
this evening.
yeah.
Okay. I'm actually an engineer by qualification, but I graduated a long time ago, more than 40 years ago. And I started work as an engineer, but then later on I sort of switched careers and went into IT when I joined Exxon, and I had my career there, mainly of course in the IT area and engineering. Plus also that's where I gathered my experience in terms of management, security, and things like that. Then I went into the consulting area with a few consulting jobs and all that. And I'm now actually semi-retired. I'm 66 years old, and but still I've got to go on because this blockchain thing is a very interesting thing, and it brings a lot of thoughts and new ideas with regards to what can be the future. So we can be followers or we can be the change makers with regards to blockchain. And I have decided my mission that I have got to still go on to see at least for Malaysia through with blockchain, and then I can retire. I think this
Amazing.
is about
Thank
as short as I can make it, unless people are going to ask questions that a bit more detailed, because I got more than 40 years work experience. It's quite a lot there.
experience. Okay, that is very well put further. So tell us again very briefly, what
Hmm.
blockchain initiative are you currently involved in?
Okay. I have been, as you introduced just now, that I've been the chairman of the Standards Committee on Blockchain and in Malaysia, which is basically working together at the international level at ISO. So Malaysia is a member of ISO, and we participate at international level. Um, I would like to qualify at this point in time that I'm not speaking on behalf of ISO or the
Okay.
government of Malaysia or Department of Standards Malaysia. So I'm talking based on my experience. So I was the chairman since formation of the local committee in 2017 until early this year. But I'm still part of the committee itself and looking into things. Now, I have been trying to actually get the local place, especially the government, to actually be more active in blockchain, and that's been my road that I've been doing. In fact, recently we have been developing, or we developed the roadmap for Malaysia for blockchain, and there are still some, I would say, discussions with regards to the way to move forward. Slowly, but surely we'll get there. But unlike other technologies, blockchain is different, and I've been emphasizing to the local government and local audience that we have to manage blockchain implementation different from other IT technologies and all that. No? And I did mention 2 nights ago why that's different, because at the ISO level, um, when the Standards Committee was formed, it was initiated by actually Standards Australia, which is a member of ISO as well,
Yeah.
proposing that we develop or ISO form a new standards committee on blockchain to develop standards on blockchain, and that happened in late 2016. And the process that we went through is that they have to basically disseminate the proposal to all the ISO member countries to get feedback and ultimately to vote what is the verdict. Now, it was interesting that I think more than 40 countries out of the over 160 countries of ISO members responded, and there was quite some intense discussion about where to go ahead. And because blockchain is relatively new at that point in time still, so there was some response from some countries saying that it's a bit early to actually go into that area or to develop standards of blockchain. There was some to basically say, well, I think blockchain should be under security, IT security. or IT in general. So so there was some discussion, but ultimately, interesting enough, the verdict, or rather the vote, the majority vote, was that the Blockchain Standards Committee is not under IT. It is a separate committee.
Okay.
So I did. I mean, you did introduce just now about the Standards Committee on IT in ISO, where we are also a mirror committee. So the IT committee on standards, the subcommittees under that are basically the typical IT areas: cloud computing, software engineering, IoT, AI, smart cards, cloud, computing and all that. But blockchain is not under this committee. It is a separate committee. And that was a very interesting decision because blockchain is much, much more than IT. It is about the changes in the way things are going to be done, which involves a lot of sectors, the financial sector, the trade sector, and all that. So the way it operates is that it liaises with a lot of these other areas, finance and banking and trade and all that, so that we do not lose sight of what's happening in the other areas, and they can benefit from jointly developing the standards in blockchain. So the important point here I would like to emphasize, and which is the reason why I'm sort of, you can see, passionate to actually push it forward, is to emphasize the point that blockchain is different from other technologies. It is not under IT per se, it is more than IT. So that's been my passion. That's how I'm occupied with my time in this blockchain area currently.
Very, very, very interesting. Today, Fatah, we are discussing successes and failures within the blockchain space. We cannot complete this conversation without asking this question. The change in the external environment and where IT is concerned is so rapid. The change is so rapid, and it is very, very dynamic. Is it feasible, really, to have a governance framework on the advancement of technology when there is change every other day?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think we have to accept the fact that the only constant that's happening in this world is change.
Yeah.
So we have to manage the change somehow. And interesting enough, you asked the question, there is already a published standard on governance of blockchain. So so there is already some guidelines with regards to how to manage this. As far as blockchain is concerned, I believe your question just now was more of a general nature, whereby a lot of other technologies are moving and all that, but we have got to move forward. And sorry, I did miss a point just now. You know, IoT has been there for quite a while. I think in terms of the concept, the thinking behind it has been probably more than 20 years.
Yeah.
But interesting enough, the Standards Committee on IoT was formed only in 2017, which is about the same time that the Blockchain Committee is formed. And the reason behind it is because IoT, there were a lot of technologies that were developed by various countries and all that. And initially, it was basically like isolated, implement within a company, within a factory floor and all that. But later on, they saw that there's a need for cross communication between IoT systems and all that. And that's where they came to decide, or rather to come in understanding to develop standards. So that's the distinction I would like to make, that despite IoT being there for quite some time, more than 20 years, only in 2017 that the Standards Committee, as far as ISO is concerned, formed the Standards Committee on IoT. But blockchain is still in its infancy, right from the beginning, as far as we can start early. We are still going through it, and yes, and as standards are developed, they are also being revised. So they are published standards, and they are also revision to the standards as we go along. It's a very interesting area to actually keep track of.
Yeah, and that is where the paradox is.
Yeah.
Blockchain is still in its infancy. It is going to change form and shape as we go along. I remember on Tuesday we joked and said in another 2 years, the conversation may absolutely change.
Precisely.
Yeah, something phenomenal will have happened.
Yes, yes.
From an intellectual perspective, when you think about it, are we really able to say we can govern this space?
It's very interesting point. I guess in this area, it's very important for all the players to
Yeah.
get an understanding to say,
Yeah.
okay, this is the vision of things to come. Let's do our part to make it happen. You know. So in this respect, um, I did mention about ISO. ISO is only one of the standards organization in the world, but they are international standards. I mean, it's basically from originated from United Nations,
Yeah.
and there are also there's another body which is basically international, which is the International Telecommunication Union. So they also are developing some standards on blockchain, but more focused towards their so-called technical areas and all that. Even though they do cover about applications and all that. Apart from that, there are other standards bodies that are industry specific or sector specific. And the important thing is that they are all trying to work together to make it happen rather than each developing their own and they are not able to eventually talk to each other and we have a problem. So in terms of governance, I think there is, if you want to say, informal kind of understanding. We have got to work together to make it happen,
Okay.
and that's actually happening.
Very, very, very interesting. I want to bounce off just to get Paul's view on that as well. So I'm wearing a critic's hat when I'm talking about governance and the formless shape in which blockchain is and in which technology looks today. And we're also talking about the need for governance. Remember, soon we'll be talking about the successes and failures, and we want to see whether we'll attribute those successes to failures, to issues around governance. Paul, what's your take on this? Fatah has given us a very, very good perspective, but I'd like to hear it from your view as a student of blockchain.
For me, I would like to bring in the same experience that we have seen in other areas, like climate change, for example. You see, climate change has been an emotive issue for many, many years, and we have seen how how different protocols have evolved over the years. For example, we had what we call Kyoto Protocol, which after many, many negotiations, it gave birth to what we now all know as the Paris Agreement. So I think that also in the same breath, as Fatah has alluded, we already have different standard organizations globally that are working on something in terms of governance. But for me, an ideal situation for me would be for all these different standard organizations to work towards one concerted effort, whereby we develop standards that are that are more uniform, that as opposed to working in silos, because that is the only way that we are going to have we are going to have a standard, because actually standard is one of the biggest issue within this space, yeah, and that is one of the biggest barrier to blockchain becoming mainstream. So if we can sort it out at that level, whereby we have a very uniform standards, then I think that should be able to sort us out in this space. Back to you, Dr. Gila.
Yeah, very, very interesting perspective. So now we will go into a story on the successes of blockchain. On Tuesday, Fatah, I put you on the spot asking you to give me a failed story, which is a lot more difficult to share.
Precisely.
Yeah, today I'm giving you an opportunity to share with us a success story on the conceptualization, development, and deployment of blockchain. You may not want to discuss who the entity is,
Okay.
But you can just give us a story so that we can learn from that experience. Of course, I'll make a follow-up questions on what were the critical success factors. So share with us a
Okay.
story.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I will start and tell a story in two sections. One is basically what a story is, the success story, and the other one is basically the higher level view about
Yeah.
how the success of blockchain per se is sort of being so-called channel upfront from right at the top. Okay, locally, actually, as Alan was talking on 2 days ago, is about vaccine tracking. We have developed in line with basically what's happening with COVID and all that. We have also this vaccine tracking, and that application is live. And basically, what it does is, each of these vaccines, the vials, basically the tubes that they contain the vaccine, they are a vial can be actually allocated or being applied to several patients, several people. So that's got serial number, and you got to time that serial number to the people who are actually getting that particular vial vaccine, and it can be as little as 5 or 6 people, or even 10, 15 people, depending on the so-called the brand of uh, the vaccine. You see, so that's already in operation. I think as far as government is concerned, I think that is one of the success story and important things because of the so-called COVID situation. Like it or not, we have got no choice. The government and developers will have to work together to actually make it happen, and that's a very important point. Okay, that's on the basically specific success story. Okay, I would like to take a step back and say something about the overall picture with regards to the blockchain per se. If you want to say success story, I would say it's a good start. Now,
Uh-huh.
one thing that's happened is that as early as even 2017, 2018, the World Customs Organization, the World Trade Organization, the United Nations have come up with papers on blockchain, which is not too common for a new technology,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
So and as far as UN papers and this organization is relating to trade, so they come up with papers talking about trade, worldwide trade in blockchain. So they are trying to put a picture that this is basically the technology that's going to be shaping the things in terms of how trade is being done. They see it important for them to come up with working papers and all that to make sure that everybody gets the message and all governments will have to go through. Now, that's one part.
Yeah.
The other part is if you know about the G20 countries, these are the so-called the top 20 countries comprise about 60, 70% of the world, either economy, the population, and all that. They have come with some story about blockchain. And it's a very interesting story because they are saying G20 countries must lead in the implementation of blockchain worldwide. Now, following on from that, you're talking about the more generic kind of a success story because of the importance of blockchain that crosses borders, crosses industries, crosses sectors, and all that. The Chinese government or the China has come up with their own infrastructure on blockchain.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have got infrastructure, including the European Union countries. They've got infrastructure blockchain, and this is something different from the other technologies. You do not hear of an infrastructure per se across countries on IoT, for example, or any other technology.
Yeah.
So these are things that should trigger the minds of people about, hey, this is something different, and we should be taking note of this kind of developments. And this is something serious coming through. So if you're talking so-called success in a general sense, I
Yeah.
would quote about this kind of infrastructure that's been built or has been built by China as well as the European Union.
Very, very interesting. You've given us a totally different perspective.
Okay.
Very, very different perspective. What do you think again? What sense do you get in terms of what's motivating that kind of change and how these economies are embracing this change? What do you attribute that to?
Okay. If you are looking at papers or books or even so-called videos from what we call the strategies of the futurists,
Yeah.
You know, consistently I've seen that what they are saying is that the blockchain today is like the World Wide Web in the early 1990s.
Okay.
So if you can imagine the World Wide Web, I mean, if there are people young enough in this audience that probably don't remember, but in the early 1990s, when the World Web came about, it was so basic. You look at it and say, oh, it may fail, it doesn't sort of work. But the development went on and on and on until today. People don't really talk about the World Wide Web because it is part of our life. It's ubiquitous. So what these futurists are saying is that blockchain will be like that, like what World Wide Web was in more than 20 years ago, but it'll be at a faster pace. So we're getting that early, so it sort of gets everybody to think about, hey, we must get there. So we develop standards, we have to work together. We're talking about interoperability, integration, and all that. That is something that we must keep in mind. Now, I would like to also remind all the audience and all that this is going to happen. It's not a matter of whether it's happening or whether it will happen, but it will happen. So the point to note is that, do you want to be ahead of the game or do you want to be a follower? So if we missed the opportunity to be ahead of the game in the 1990s when the World Wide Web was basically evolving, now is the time for you to think about it and say, we want to go ahead. And I think Africa is positioned to do that. You have got to leapfrog, and you have got, you probably don't have much legacy systems that you have currently. You can leapfrog ahead. So there's a challenge you can take from Africa.
Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting there, Fata. Now, I'd like to draw your attention to another side of the conversation.
Okay.
And here I'll be touching on an affiliate of blockchain, what we call crypto or cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
And feel free, hoping you're familiar with it. If you're not very familiar with it, don't feel any pressure. But this is my question.
Mm-hmm.
The crypto crash of 2017, 2018. Remember, we are discussing failures and successes.
Yeah.
Talking about the crash of 2017, 2018, what would you say are the lessons we should have learned so that this does not happen again? There's still a lot of apprehension in the marketplace.
Precisely,
about crypto, for example. As early as today, I was having a conversation with a senior technocrat in government, and they have these reservations about crypto. So I'm looking at you from where you sit, you're able to see what's going on around. And the question for me is, based on that crash, what lessons do you think the world needs to learn? And how do we avoid similar things happening again?
Since you asked the question in that manner, I would have to admit that crypto is one area that I do not really so-called focus in much detail. So I wouldn't be able to say with a level of authority and opinion with regards to basically what happened and what can be avoided. But I want to emphasize another point with regards to this crypto or these other things that evolved since then. Currently, you've got NFTs and DeFi and those things like that. Now, if you look at these papers on blockchain for trade, for example, it came from UN and from World Trade Organization, World Customs Organization. That's a few years ago, right? And the basic thing that we actually have there is a blockchain layer. That's where you have basically the transparency, traceability, immutability, and all that. And it's basically the basic blockchain. There is no so-called driver or a hurry per se to indicate that. Apart from that, now we've got to go into NFTs, we've got to go into crypto and all that, because all this can operate within the current currencies system and all that, because we're talking really about that base layer about blockchain for international trade. So that is the current emphasis in there. And to me, there has been very, well, as far as I can recall reading materials and what I've been exposed to, there's very little emphasis to say we've got to hurry in terms of blockchain implementation because we got to go to the next level to implement NFTs and these other things. It's not really dependent on that. That's quite a separate thing. So I would say in general, because of that emphasis on that layer that must be established, especially in the area of international trade, that has been my focus and area rather than these other areas on cryptocurrency and all that.
Oh, okay, great. Very, very, very well put. So I'll put our colleague Paul on the spot on this.
Okay.
So Paul, I've heard what Fatah has said. You may have familiarized yourself more with this issue. We are looking at the crash. We are discussing successes and failures today. And I'm asking again to you, Paul, what lessons do you think the world should have learned so that this does not happen again?
Now, today, actually, sometime earlier today, we were having this same discussion in another forum where some people think that, they would want to imagine that, a currency like crypto should be made the de facto currency so that it can replace the fiat currency. And I think over and over again on this same platform, I've always made my views open. And my take is that crypto actually, Dr. Julian, is one of the first success stories of blockchain. Because look at it this way, crypto was set up as a private currency. And it has been able to gain a good success for itself, not putting the failures aside. But of course, it has come with a lot of successes, which has gone actually to prove that, that blockchain is a very viable technology at the base layer. Now, in terms of the crash, you have to understand how this crash has happened. Now, it is very unfortunate, very, very unfortunate that people who have been involved in, the traditional financial, traditional financial sector or services, these are the same people who've come to crypto. And they have tried to implement the same models that failed, that, for example, we witnessed in 2008. And they have tried to implement the same models in crypto. So these are the things that have actually brought problems within the crypto. And for me, as far as I'm concerned, that is the more reason why we need to have a regulatory framework within the space. And those are some of the lessons we should be able to learn, that as much as these cryptocurrencies, they run on decentralized ledger technologies, that does not mean that they cannot operate within a regulatory framework. Because if we cannot operate within a regulatory framework, then these things will happen again. These crashes will happen again. And when they do, people lose money. People lose their savings. We have to be honest with ourselves. Yeah? Because you see, money is a very emotive issue. And human beings, naturally, all of us, we have tendencies for greed, right?
Yeah.
And the moment someone comes to you and tells you that, look, I can that invest in this crypto, I'll be able to give you 20% return, 30% return, 10% returns. That appeals to our greed. That appeals to our greed as human beings. Yes? Yeah. So if we cannot have a regulatory framework to check that greed, then things will always go wrong. And just imagine this. Imagine if now we take AI, put it inside a smart contract. Imagine what can happen. Because you see now, AI, we are talking of things that they can take forms of the, these are things that we will no longer be in control of. They can, these are autonomous agents that they can do things that we do not even envision. Yeah. So those are the hard ethical issues that we really have to think about. That if we have learned anything, actually, this is now the time to push for a regulatory framework. And for me, the kind of regulatory framework that I'm thinking of, it is not the piecemeal regulatory framework that every country is trying to come up with. We should go for a regulatory framework that has worked in areas like climate change, where you have an international protocol that does not operate, that is not constrained within certain borders. A protocol that is uniform, that cuts across borders, so that the US will not have their own, their own regulation. You go to China, they have their own regulation. You come to Africa, they have their own regulation. We should go for a regulatory framework that is a global protocol. Because you see, again, when you are dealing with the decentralized technologies, you are dealing with technologies that are cutting across borders. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Ray.
Thank you very, very much, Paul, for that insight. Very, very, very helpful. So I'll come back to Fata, and I'd like to spin the conversation just a little bit. Back to blockchain again. There are very many sectors in which the blockchain as a platform can thrive. And from where you sit, you're able to see where things seem to happen very, very well, almost seamlessly. You could say this sector adoption of blockchain is a lot simpler, and there could be reasons behind them. So besides the sectors, again, you may talk about the use cases. So on the sectors, I would say, which is the most compelling sectors that adoption of blockchain is a lot easier and seamless? So that's the good side. And then we can say, now looking at the use cases, which are those 2 or 3 use cases that you consider to be the most problematic? I don't know if I've structured that well. So there are 2 sides to the question. We are looking at health, we are looking at transport, we are looking at, and we can say this particular sector, blockchain does very well in this sector. And this is the reason. But that said, there are these use cases in these sectors that have proven to be problematic in the past. Again, just to create a bit more broader awareness in our people. Fata, I hope I have relayed the question properly.
Okay.
And you can take 10 seconds or so to reflect on that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Don't feel rushed. What are these sectors where blockchain, running on the rail of blockchain is so efficient and so effective? Case studies have shown that it works perfectly well and it's a lot easier. But that said, the following use cases are a little bit complicated, and these are the issues that arise with them. So, Fata, when you're ready, you can
Okay.
Yeah.
How many minutes do I have?
I'll give you 5 minutes comfortably, 4 to 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay. There are various dimensions to consider in this area. You are asking from the point of view of where it's sort of will be probably most appropriate or probably can be most successful. Now, I'd like to take a step back and basically turn the issue from another angle. Because blockchain, you implement it in areas where you actually want to have transparency, traceability, immutability, and all that. So that is the key one. So you are looking at the various sectors and the various business areas. Where do you think this is critically needed? And as I mentioned earlier, before your question, before Paul explained his topic on cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
I mentioned about the world organizations that have come up with papers of blockchain.
Yeah.
World trade is very, very important, and that's where things are actually happening very actively in developing the various areas in the international trade, even in local trade, or in the supply chain and all that. You're talking about trade financing. You're talking about transportation, the bill of lading, the ships manifest and all that. The work is going on in this area. So ultimately, I would say that basically the whole world supply chain will be going quite fast in this direction, and it's a matter of time before everybody has got to catch up in this area. Okay, so that is basically how I would say in terms of where the successes would be. Now, taking a step back, now this may be an interesting point, and I think it requires a bit of pondering. Now, the World Economic Forum has come up with a paper, I think it was 2019,
Yeah.
a title "Blockchain Beyond the Hype." If you can
Beyond.
do a
Yeah.
Google search and search that.
Mhm.
Now, they come up with like a flow chart with regards to how do you decide whether you need to use blockchain or not. Okay, so there is 11 steps in there. I do not have a presentation, so I cannot show you, but I can verbalize. Now, what
Yeah.
interesting thing about this particular flow chart, the
Yeah.
very first question that's being asked, are you trying to remove intermediaries? That's the very first question they ask.
Okay.
They don't ask, are you going to be more productive when you actually implement blockchain? They don't ask whether you're going to simplify the work you're doing. The first question they ask, do you want to remove intermediaries? If the answer is yes, then the next question you can look into blockchain. If the answer is no, do not implement blockchain. Finish.
That's a nice
Now,
one.
yeah. You look at it. So I think that particularly the audience, I encourage you all to actually download that particular document, Blockchain Beyond the Hype, by the World Economic Forum. It's been there for a few years, and it's a very important point because if you do not understand or do not see from that angle, then it's going to be a problem. Okay. Now, talking about that, this to another point where there are many players within a particular business area, and supply chain and trade facilitation is really one area where a lot of players are in there, and there's some intermediate players as well, which we can call as intermediaries. And blockchain definitely will be able to basically cover the areas which may make some of these intermediaries redundant. Okay, so I mean, if talking about international trade, you've got a lot of papers going everywhere and all that. There was this one article that basically says when a shipment goes from country A to country B by ship, at the same time you have got airflow of all the paperwork that goes from country A to country B and so on and so forth. Talking about trade financing, insurance, and all that. Of course, some are digitalized, but there's still a lot of paper going around. So important thing to note there is that where there is a process involving a number of players in that area, and definitely you can see that in each of this area, there can be some form of intermediaries that you can see we can probably do away with that with blockchain. So that's why the very first question is asked in that. Now, talking about the one, I counter check. There is another paper from India. This is from the National Institute of Transformation of India, NITI, on their so-called blockchain strategy and roadmap released in January 2020. They've also got a similar sort of flow chart. But the first question that they ask there is, are you trying to reduce intermediaries? So World Economic Forum asked a question, are you trying to remove intermediaries? This one is asking, are you trying to reduce? So intermediaries may be there, but you are trying to reduce them. Yeah. So both are consistent. And this is something that you got to take note, because if you do not get that view with regards to the role of intermediaries, how you can actually optimize, reduce, or remove it, whatever, then you're probably getting into an area whereby your decision is wrong. Now, having said that, you've got to be careful, because it can create a lot of anxiety in terms of the people who are there, especially the intermediaries. So there must be a concerted effort by the government to ensure that if there is an implementation that results in some people losing their function, you have got to probably retrain them, reskill them to get other skills so that they do not lose their job, or they do not become unemployed, and there will be a lot of resistance if the packaging is not done right. Okay, I think let's stop there. I'm not sure it's 5 minutes, but I can go on.
That was so powerful. That was so interesting.
Oh yeah.
But,
Download those two papers. World Economic Forum, Blockchain Beyond Hype, and then this other paper on India's blockchain strategy or something like that, the roadmap by NITI, NITI. There are two roadmaps actually from India, you know. But I'm talking about the one from NITI, released in January 2020.
Nikki Jan 2020.
NIT, yeah. NITI, National Institute of for Transformation of India. Transformation of India. It's a very interesting name.
Very, very interesting. We are almost coming towards the
conclusion. So soon, huh?
1 hour can rush, but we still have some time, a little bit of time, maybe for 1 or 2 more questions.
Okay.
Paul, did you hear that response from Fatah? Paul, you're muted. Did you hear that powerful response from Fatah? Can you hear us? Okay. Okay, Paul, we can't hear you, so we'll just proceed. So Fatah. Okay, Paul. Yeah, you heard what Fatah said about how to consider the relevance of blockchain in any kind of transition or change. Hello, Paul.
It's frozen.
Yes. I didn't get your question, Dr. Julian.
No, I was just telling you, you had that powerful response from Fatah on how.
Yes, I did.
On how
yes. Yes, I did hear that loud and clear. Yeah. And probably just to add into what he said, especially that aspect of removing or reducing intermediaries.
Yeah.
You're losing him.
Paul, we are losing you.
Is in the areas of finance, logistics, and healthcare. I think those are areas whereby intermediaries have been a big pain point.
Okay.
To the end users or consumers.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So I'll go back again. Thank you, Paul. I'll go back again to Fatah, probably our last 2 questions for the day. You have so ably discussed the need for blockchain and the questions around regulating them. And Paul has also come out very strongly, alluding to crypto and the need for regulation. So the question for you, Fatah, should governments be active participants in the question of blockchain? Should governments be active participants? If the answer is yes, tell us why. If the answer is no, share your opinion on why. Should governments be active participants?
Yes, the answer is yes, and a definite yes, and a very serious yes, because ultimately, with any technology, and especially with blockchain implementation, there will be a requirement, in some sense, for some regulations to be revised, updated, and so on and so forth, right? And this is where the government must come in, and they must see ahead that this is coming, and to plan for whatever changes that has to happen. That's point number 1. Point number 2, I did quote in the last session 2 nights ago that there is this report from World Economic Forum again, relating to a case study on learnings from the UAE experience in implementing blockchain. Now, just by way of background, UAE, Dubai, they've got the blockchain being driven top down by the government, by the Sultan or their ruler and all that. So you have the strong so-called force into implementing blockchain from the top. Despite that, the findings from this report from World Economic Forum, it says that the top 5 challenges in implementing blockchain are non-technical, non-technology issues. And I'll read it to you. The first one is difficulty in bringing together the required stakeholders. Now, again, the point here, the government is trying to emphasize you got to do it, but still they record here this is a challenge. So governments must take note that this is going to be a challenge and they must be prepared for it. Second one, unclear regulatory implications. Okay. The third one, educating and awareness of the involved stakeholders. The fourth one is identifying and understanding the most relevant applications of blockchain. Again, coming back to the question, the decision tree just now, and which is the most relevant and which is sort of, oh, probably you don't have to do that. Yeah? And the five one, addressing governance. Okay. Then you come after the top five, which is basically non-technology, talking about people issues, about regulatory issues and all that. The next one is addressing interoperability. And that is technology issue.
Technology.
Okay, and go on down. But to emphasize the point that government is very, very important. And I have got to say that our neighbor here, Singapore, really the government is really pushing and driving a lot of the blockchain initiatives in the government itself and in the country. Right? There's a close cooperation between the government agencies and also the developers community developing blockchain to ensure that they can develop applications in this area. So it's very, very important to actually have the government in this area.
Fata, very well put. But the challenge I put to you, when you're looking at blockchain and the space of blockchain, the utterance of blockchain speak about new democracy. The utterance of blockchain speaks about it's peer-to-peer. We design the rules of engagement, but you also want me to believe that the government must be involved. Please unpack this for me.
Oh boy, well, that's quite a big story here. Like it or not, government must be there. Their roles may be changed. But they have to transform in line with keeping with the technology changes in general, plus also especially with blockchain. Definitely within the government services itself, there's a lot of opportunity to use blockchain and to simplify, and of course to what we call remove intermediaries or minimize intermediaries. And that's going to be a challenge. Because I mean, many countries are seeing the government as a safe employer. And suddenly you come to a situation like this whereby, you can see opportunities, or the government can see opportunities to actually optimize, to change, or whatever, minimize intermediaries. And you are faced with a situation where you are having a dilemma, what to do, because you have been portraying or rather been assuring sort of you are a so-called guaranteed safe employer. And now you're in a situation whereby the so-called national interest with regards to optimization of your services comes to play, and you've got to do a balancing act to ensure that, you are pinning at the right level. Otherwise, you're going to lose governing the country again. I'm not sure whether I answered the question.
Yeah, you answered the question. The question. So if I submit here, and we are discussing successes and failures, if I submit that to succeed in developing and deploying blockchain, we must see government as a critical stakeholder. And
very critical, yes. Can I add something to that?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Another reference that you all may want to look at is that at the European Union Parliament, this is a parliament, just to give background, this parliament has got 750 members of parliament from 27 countries. There's a big parliament, okay? They have released 2 resolutions on blockchain. One is on blockchain in general, the other one is blockchain on trade. Both are released in 2018. Okay, now you start thinking and sort of see, why does the government release or rather release basically a resolution, or what does a parliament release a resolution on what we call a technology in that respect? And of course, you do elaboration. There's a lot about where blockchain can be implemented and all that, So then you start thinking of, this must be something very different. And they are setting the scene over there, at least you to take note that that's what they are doing. We have to watch out and see how is it applicable to us. And definitely it is very applicable. And that's why, based on one of the documents there, I've written my own blog in, I can remember the date, 31st December of 2018, really explaining about this particular resolution on blockchain by the European Union. You can actually do a Google search my name and find out about the blog. Very, very important. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Very insightful. My final question.
Okay.
Personal in nature.
Personal. Okay.
Yeah. What next? What next for Fata, your team, on blockchain? What next for you?
Well, I've made it my personal mission to actually get it through and done in Malaysia, to actually get the ball rolling, the momentum going on that. I got to admit that I've given more than 40 talks on blockchain, various platforms, conferences, and all that. And to be humble about it, I do not demand any payment. Some of them, most of them basically do not pay anything. They just call me, okay, can we have a chat or whatever? I can have a, to be a panel or whatever. I don't demand. And some of them, of course, they will decide what they want to pay me. No negotiation. I just don't negotiate. This is my bank account. You just put it in. But basically, most of them, because of the mission that I have, basically it's free of charge. I will give. And the other thing as well is my presentation charts, I do not put any copyright. It can be up to even 100 pages of charts and all that. And some people have been asking me, don't you put a copyright on your charts? I said, no, I want to disseminate. I want people to know. I want people to understand. And that's basically where I'm going until I see at a point in time where things are moving basically on their own with the momentum and all that. Then I'll probably step back and retire and take care of my grandchildren.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Fatah. I learned today that you do wide reading. You made references to a lot of journals to either clarify or put through an argument, which for me is very humbling. So, as your final remarks, those of us, the young people who want to develop the kind of knowledge that you have shared here today, what kind of resources would you like to direct them to? Personally, I'm so encouraged with the element of reading and reading from other journals and experts in the subject, but I would like to hear from you how you'd ask us and the listenership to develop their know-how in this subject.
Okay, I think the first thing is to basically try to understand, and I give some examples just now about the European Union resolution in blockchain, to try to understand what is it, why are they doing that? And you can sort of figure out, yes, important. Then you start doing some more research and reading and all that, where it goes from there and how it is progressing and what the issues and all that. The important thing is to read and keep track. It's very, very important. In this day and age of internet, the World Wide Web and all that, a lot of information comes through and all that. I think we have got no excuse in basically getting the right information with a lot of search queries and all that to refine the search query to actually get the thing that you want with alternative views and all that to do the reading. And subscribe to some very interesting journals or news feeds and all that to actually explain about these things, and try to maintain a focus with regards to what you want to do. This blockchain is very big. From the time that I come to know about blockchain in 2016 and so on, things have moved, things have changed. They're not going to stop. Now you got DeFi, you got NFTs, and you've got CBDCs, and you've got metaverse and all that. It's not going to stop there. It's going to go on and on. But talking about the basic areas, again, coming back to the basic blockchain, as we see it today, like in trade facilitation and all that, the blockchain needs to be established. Then you can layer on it with regards to, for example, things like cryptocurrencies and all, if you wish to. But it works with fiat as well. Okay, so reading is very, very important. Keeping track and join so-called user groups, feeds and all that to ensure they can have exchanges of views and sharing of information. In fact, the way I look at it, where I can come across interesting articles, sometimes I read a particular feed and it makes references to others. And that's where you click on the others, you can get something more. So that's where the knowledge is sort of being expanded, provided you start reading and you can get to the other areas and all that. So in my case, I've got a backlog of reading materials that I've got to catch up, So yeah, really. And I would really like to have an assistant to actually assist me in reading certain things
Okay.
and all that and
Okay.
summarize.
Interesting.
So I prepare my own presentation charts, and from all these materials that I read and all that, I would be glad to share with you.
Yeah.
If anybody like to of that,
Very,
Okay.
very, very well put. Paul, I don't think we've had that level of generosity with regard to the resources we can align ourselves to. Fatah, your team, that was an amazing conversation with you. The depth that we've gone into in unpacking this question, you've done it so much justice. And our audience there, you have it from one of the best. Paul, I'm so proud to be part of this process, especially when I have the opportunity to meet and engage with people like Fatah Yatim. Again, Fatah, thank you so much. I look forward to more engagement in the future. I have I've really enjoyed myself. I don't know about you. Did you have a good time?
I'm pleased to actually have this conversation, and I hope I did my little part in trying to impart the interest and also the importance of this area that we need to explore much deeper and faster.
And
it's very important.
Thank you very much. And Paul, you'll have the last word. Thank you so much, Fatah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gillian, for making it very successful today. And to our invited guests, Fatah, thank you so much again for coming second time to our platform and sharing, just pouring yourself out to us today. We really appreciate that. And also, of course, not forgetting our audience for making time to be part of this live discussion. We also want to appreciate you. And that brings us to the end of this session. Until we see you next week again, enjoy your evening, enjoy your night, your morning, your afternoon, depending on where you are calling from. Asanteni sana. Bye for now.
Bye, Fatah.
Bye.
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 Bye.